All right, so this video is specifically for commercial drivers who might need to have medicals performed like a DOT physical and are concerned because you might be overweight or obese and you don't know how that could affect the exam. Can you be certified? What extra hoops might you need to jump through? So I'm going to break everything down, give you all of the information you need to know so you're prepared before going in to get your DOT physical performed. All right, so there are a lot of misconceptions and confusion about this topic specifically, so I'm going to cut through all of that and use the only source that matters, and that is the Certified Medical Examiner's Handbook for 2024. I'm going to read right out of it. This is the handbook that we, the doctors, use to perform the exam, so it's really the only source that matters, and I will link it in the description box below if you want to read it for yourself, as well as everything else that I cite in this video. All right, so first, a statistic, and the statistic is, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, nearly 70% of truck drivers in the United States are obese compared to the national average, which is 40%. So I think the reasons here are obvious. Driving is very stressful. It doesn't require a lot of exercise. You're sitting a lot of the time. The food choices aren't great. You're eating at rest stops or fast food places. But rest assured, we, the examiners, the doctors, are used to seeing drivers who are overweight and obese, and we don't disqualify all of them. If we disqualified 70% of the drivers that came into our office, there would be no drivers. There's already a driver shortage. So rest assured that we're used to seeing drivers who are overweight or obese. There's nothing to be ashamed of. There are ways to get through the exam and be medically qualified, and that's what we're going to go through. All right, so obesity by itself is not disqualifying. Now, in the previous edition of the Medical Examiner's Handbook, there were specific language about when a doctor, if performing the DOT physical on a driver, should order a sleep apnea study, so a test to see if they had sleep apnea. And you might be familiar with this. It'd be a measurement of your neck circumference or your BMI. That no longer exists as a mandate from the FMCSA. So let's look specifically at what the handbook says. So the January 2024 edition of the Medical Examiner's Handbook replaces all previous handbook editions. Medical examiners should not rely on previously published editions of the handbook, including any drafts available on the FMCSA's Medical Review Board website. So the 2024 edition is the only edition that matters as a source of agency guidance. In addition, section 4.8.3.6, which I will go through, of the handbook replaces the January 2015 FMCSA bulletin to medical examiners and training organizations regarding obstructive sleep apnea. So this 2015 bulletin is where medical providers, the doctors, got this advice that they should refer for sleep apnea studies with certain neck circumference sizes or certain BMIs. All right, so now we'll bounce down to 4.8.3.6, the obstructive sleep apnea section, and I'll just give you the highlights here. So first, it defines what obstructive sleep apnea is, but then I'll give you the last sentence. If treated, moderate to severe, sleep apnea does not preclude certification. So even if you have sleep apnea, as long as it's treated, you can be certified to drive. And they go on further to say the FMCSRs, the regulations, do not include requirements for medical examiners, MEs, to screen individuals for OSA, sleep apnea. So there are no requirements for medical examiners to screen for sleep apnea, or provide requirements regarding whether to recommend that an individual be referred for sleep apnea testing. So there's no requirement to refer for sleep apnea testing for any reason. The regulations also do not specify preferred diagnostic testing methods, treatment methods, or requirements by which to assess compliance for sleep apnea treatment. All right, so what this means is we, the medical examiners, do not have to send anyone for sleep apnea studies if we choose not to. We just use the data, the clinical information that we get from the driver and the exam to make that determination, but we're not required to if they're over a certain neck size or BMI. However, they do say, and this is in my opinion a little contradictory here, that sleep apnea does have to be treated. So if treated, moderate to severe sleep apnea does not preclude certification. So you can be certified as long as your sleep apnea is treated if you were diagnosed with sleep apnea. But we have to have a way to determine if you are being treated. And they say again that there are no requirements by which to assess compliance for sleep apnea treatment. So it is up to us, the doctors, the examiners, to determine what method we want to determine if you're being treated appropriately for your sleep apnea. All right, so those are the regulations, and there aren't many. And then they do give us some guidance, so some suggestions, some things we can use. And that is this 2016 bulletin, which they link, and again, I will link in the description of this video. And here is where there are some suggestions about sending for sleep studies with certain BMIs or with certain comorbidities, etc. So again, doctors can use this to make determinations on if they want to send for a sleep apnea sleep study, but they don't have to. All right, so what does all this mean? And I will just tell you what I do, how I interpret these standards. And basically what I do, we need to think about the purpose of the exam. The purpose of the exam is the driver sitting in front of you safe to drive? We're not trying to diagnose everything, treat everything, every disorder that they might have. We're trying to make sure that it's safe for them to be on the road. That is our jobs, nothing more, nothing less. So I don't order sleep studies by any metric, by any neck measurement, even though it's in that 2016 bulletin that you can use that as a suggestion. BMI, I don't go and order sleep studies on everyone over a certain BMI. I will only order sleep studies if I think that a driver has sleep apnea. Maybe they report that they have sleepiness throughout the day. So basically, I have to feel that it potentially could be unsafe for this person to be driving, to be on the road, because they might fall asleep. They might fall asleep while driving. But what I will do is I will ask for what's called a compliance report from the CPAP machine that you're using if you have been diagnosed and prescribed a CPAP. Now again, this is not a requirement, but it is a requirement that we make sure that you're being treated appropriately. So basically what I look for is a 30-day period of time. Are you using your CPAP machine for 4 hours per night, 70% of the last 30 days? Alternatively to this, I will accept a letter from the prescribing doctor just basically stating that you are compliant with your CPAP treatment, your sleep apnea treatment. That would suffice as well. Either one would be sufficient to be able to certify a driver who has sleep apnea. All right, so again, going back to that 2016 bulletin that I referenced earlier, that is again linked in the description below, one of the suggestions is that drivers with sleep apnea who are treated with a CPAP machine should get a 1-year medical card, and I do stick with that. I do only certify drivers that have sleep apnea using a CPAP machine for 1 year, again, because the compliance with CPAP machines varies a lot, and we want to make sure that you're actually using that machine, because sleep apnea can be a major safety issue if you are driving. All right, so that's the major concern that drivers who are overweight or obese have is, do they automatically get sent for sleep studies if they are overweight, obese, have a certain BMI or a neck circumference? The answer is that doctors can make any determination they want, and they're not off base or out of bounds by asking for a sleep study. They can do it for any reason that they want, but they're not mandated to. That's how I do it. That's how I interpret the rules and the regulations. And again, my focus is always, is this driver safe to be on the road? And if not, how do we get them there? Now, being overweight or obese can cause other problems, other health problems that are dealt with specifically and differently from this sleep apnea standard. So things like high blood pressure, which there are very particular parameters that are not in the medical examiner, the doctor's control. You have to be within certain blood pressure numbers in order to be certified, and if not, your certification gets cut down or you potentially could not be certified at all. I've done complete video on blood pressure. I won't rehash all of that because that information is accurate. I will again link that video in the description box below. And the other is insulin dependent diabetes. This one has very strict parameters directly from the FMCSA as well. And again, I've done a video on that specifically, so I'm not going to rehash all of that. That video is also accurate. So if you're concerned with either of these, which could be related to being overweight or obese, check out those videos. So the bottom line here is that a lot of doctors, medical examiners are just unfamiliar with the new rules, and some may still use the old standard, but some may just decide that they want to send for sleep studies because that's what makes them feel comfortable about certifying a driver, and there's nothing in the rules or the regulations saying that they can't do that. All I did was give you my opinion and how I do an exam and how I interpret these rules and regulations. All right, I hope this video helps boost your confidence before going in to get your DOT physical performed. If you found this video useful, I would greatly appreciate a like on this video. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments section below. I love helping people out. Until next time, drivers, stay safe.